and welcome back our viewers. Now it's time for our daily press review for today, Wednesday the 13th of January 2016. You are in the company of Maahiistي, Rubia, and I'm very much delighted to have in the studio with me Mr. Mohamed Sheta, the media expert. Hello sir, thank you very much for being with us. And we'll start our press review for today from Al-Ahram. A fact-finding committee formed by Egypt's presidency has concluded that statements made in December by Hisham Geneina, the head of the Central Auditing Organization, said government corruption cost the country 600 billion Egyptian pounds in 2015 were exaggerated and misleading. The spokesperson for the CAO had later corrected Geneina's remarks, saying that the amount was rather for the period between 2012 and 2015 and not in 2015 alone. The uproar caused by Geneina's statement and consequent confusion on the numbers promoted the presidency to form a panel in same month to probe the allegations. Releasing its report on Tuesday, the panel said Geneina's remarks lacked credibility and were exaggerated and delusional. It accused Geneina of intentional disregard of facts and abuse of numbers. The panel, which is comprised of representatives from the Finance, Justice and Interior Ministries, as well as Geneina's deputies, said it contacted Geneina in late December to inquire about his statement. The panel wondered about Geneina's motivation behind his statement, adding that it's noteworthy that corruption document was prepared in corruption with foreign bodies. Sir, we have seen very confusing reports by Mr. Geneina about the level of corruption in 2015, which amounted to 600 billion Egyptian pounds, and a panel was formed and released that these numbers were misleading and were exaggerated, and it's not true. So how to see the scene here, which is, I believe, very confusing and very inappropriate?
Well, you know that corruption is everywhere. We have corruption in Egypt, we have corruption in Germany, we have corruption in the United States, we have corruption everywhere. But the problem is the amount of corruption,
yes, and the figure which was released, 600 billion Egyptian pounds in 2015.
Exactly.
It's huge.
This is a huge number, and if it's true that that he was using old numbers without revising them, this would really focus the light on the motivations of Mr. Geneina's statements. And if also the document was prepared in cooperation with foreign bodies, well, I'm not really sure about how independent such numbers would be. I'm really surprised by this by Geneina's statement, and I hope that I heard that President Sisi approved that this document would be transferred to the Parliament for discussion inside the Parliament.
Indeed, it's a top priority, I believe, because it could create a big mess. Because the number released, 600 billion Egyptian pounds, it could be the budget of a state.
That's for sure. Actually, not only one state. So I hope that
in 1 year the level of corruption could reach 600 billion Egyptian pounds. I'm really doubtful about that.
It's definitely the number is definitely a little bit too much.
Exaggerated.
And we have corruption not only in the public sector but also in the private sector, by the way. And so this is. I hope that when the Parliament discusses corruption in general, that he not only focuses on the public sector but also on the private sector as well.
Indeed. Moving to أخبار اليوم, and we read that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has extended a state of emergency in parts of northern Sinai governorate for 3 months starting January. The extension will be in effect starting the 27th of January. The state of emergency covers El Arish and Rafah and some surrounding areas. A right time curfew from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. has also been extended in other areas in northern Sinai, and this area will see a 4-hour curfew starting from 1 a.m. Of course, the decision to extend the curfew in El Arish and Rafah starting the 27th of January. How do you see that? And I believe it's a procedural measure in order to try to control the security in these areas in Northern Sinai?
I think it's a very necessary step. We have reduced the numbers of attacks on the Sinai significantly during the past, not we, I mean the police and armed forces, of course.
Yeah, indeed.
And I think this is a very necessary step, and this will only increase the stability on the Sinai and consequently also in Egypt overall.
Moving to Shirun newspaper. Egypt newly elected parliament approved the formation of a new 19 committees entitled to discuss laws and decisions issued in the absence of the parliament. Ambassador Mohamed Al-Arabi had been elected as head of the Committee on Foreign Relations, and Dina had been chosen to chair the Legislative Committee. Also, Kamal Amir shall be the head of the Parliament National Security Committee. Mohamed Sheta has been chosen for Agriculture and Irrigation Committee, and Councillor Murtada Mansour will be heading the Human Rights Committee. And every committee has a head and a secretary. Parliament Speaker Ali Abdel Al decided to refer the laws issued under President Sisi and former interim minister Adli Mansour to those committees to discuss them. We have seen on Sunday the first session of the parliament, the procedural session, and after that we have seen sessions taking place, choosing the parliament speaker, the 2 deputies, and now the 19 committees with their heads. How do you see that? You are laughing, so you are happy about the parliament.
I had to laugh when I read that Councillor Murtada Mansour will be heading the Human Rights Committee. I hope that he will not be using the same expressions he uses when he gets when he's a guest in the sports programs on the different TV channels. Now, let's go back to a little bit more of seriousness. Of course, it's very important, the different committees we have, and I think Ambassador Mohamed Al-Arabi, who was our former ambassador to Germany, as well as our former Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think it's a very good choice having him heading the Foreign Relations Committee.
Of course, he's a very respectable figure.
Of course, and we also need what we need. I hope that the Parliament also focuses on some really important issues for the Egyptian people, and I think one of the most important issues is the road safety issue and the environment issue. I think air pollution in Egypt is unacceptable anymore, and it's very important for attracting foreign investors. Both these issues, road safety and
I believe both the issues that you have been talking about, Mr. Sheta, the road safety and the environment, are crucial issues in Egypt that we are facing, because the mortality and the accident rates in Egypt is very high, and of course the pollution in Egypt is high too. So we have to tackle and handle these issues with other issues like the health and of course education.
Of course, and of course education. Let me talk first about the road safety issue. As you correctly mentioned, we have some of the highest, if not the highest, road safety fatalities numbers worldwide. It's a real crisis
that we are facing.
Exactly, and just a couple of days ago, you know, the old Parliament issued a decree regarding the trailers of the trucks for banning them, and then a couple of days ago they banned the ban on the trailers. You know, which is actually correct, because the trailer itself never was the problem. The problem was the condition of the truck itself.
The condition of the truck and the condition of the driver.
And
the condition of the road, because it's quite a mess, because we see trucks and we see everything in Europe and in other countries, and we do not suffer from the same repercussions and the rate of accidents.
Because they have something called roadworthiness test for all the cars, not only for the trucks and buses, but also for the passenger cars, which we need definitely here in Egypt. We need to have a roadworthiness test for trucks every 3 or 6 months, for example, for passenger cars every year, in order to make sure that the cars moving on the roads are safe, are not only safe for the people driving them, but also for the pedestrians and the other road users. So this is a very important thing which the government needs to tackle. Another thing is the air pollution. We need to really have significant steps towards improving the air quality in Egypt, because this is one of the main factors why investors, if you offer a general manager for a foreign company, for example, to come to Egypt and open a factory here, he would come here for a pre-visit to see if the country would be appropriate for him and his family. And the first thing he will notice is the air pollution. And I know many friends and many personal friends who actually declined to open a factory in Egypt because of the air pollution and the unacceptable traffic situation in Egypt. So I hope the Parliament will really tackle these issues as well. And as you mentioned, education, this is the most important thing. Indeed. This is a very long-term issue. We need to have a plan, a 20 or 30 years plan, because actually we need to start with the generation entering school, entering to first grade right now. So hopefully this will be on their top priority.
Indeed. Still with the Shroq newspaper, and we read President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met on Tuesday with the Minister of Electricity, Mohamed Sheta. Both sides discussed the Electricity Ministry's plans to provide necessary electric power to avoid outages, according to Presidential spokesman Ala Youssef. In his respect, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi praised the high implementation rates of the ministry urgent plan. He also reviewed the agreement signed with the foreign companies to establish new power plants. Yet Sheta indicated that a memorandum of understanding will be signed with China in the fields related to electricity during the visit of the Chinese president to Egypt this month. How do you see this meeting between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the Minister of Electricity? And here I have to hail the role played by the Ministry of Electricity in solving the issue of the outages of power.
Definitely, we have witnessed a significant improvement
Yes, indeed.
in the electricity situation in Egypt. You hardly have any outages anymore, yes. At least not in Cairo, and this is definitely something very important. Of course, the visit of the Chinese president will have a significant impact on the business relation between Egypt and China. Nevertheless, we noticed that the equity markets in China last week faced some very turbulent days, which actually affected all the equity markets worldwide, not only in China.
The world stock markets were in decline.
Exactly, and they were, of course, considering the devaluation of the yuan in order to increase their export a little bit. So we need to be very cautious when dealing with China, and also, of course, with the Chinese companies. So I hope that when we discuss business projects with China, that not only the Chinese part will benefit from it, but we also need to make sure that also the Egyptian economy and the Egyptian labor force benefits from this very much. Another very important meeting which President al-Sisi had last week was with the head of the intelligence with the intelligence service, and also with the I think the Minister of Irrigation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the day before yesterday.
And of course, this was also because actually the water problem.
It's a matter of national security.
It's not only a matter of national security, but we could also use the water dams and other things in generating electricity. So I think after solving the problems with Addis Ababa, I think we really should consider, because for example in India they have a project called the linking rivers, for example. They're trying to link, I think, 39 rivers or something like that in order with each other in order to create electricity. So this is one of the projects which I think the Egyptian government and the Ministry of Electricity should also consider in order to generate clean power.
Hopefully. Moving to Al-Ahram newspaper, from we read some international news. Egypt had condemned in strongest terms the terrorist bombing that rocked Turkey's Istanbul, killing 10 people and wounding 15 others in the city's main tourist hub of Sultan Ahmed. In an official press release, the spokesperson for the Egyptian Foreign Ministry expressed the Egyptian condolences to the Turkish peoples and families of the victims of other nationalities. Following the bombing, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Tuesday that a Syrian militant is thought to be responsible for the attack, though no group has claimed responsibility. The details.
Egypt has condemned it. Egypt has condemned in the strongest terms a terrorist bombing that rocked Turkey's Istanbul, killing 10 people and wounding 15 others in the city's main hub, Sultan Ahmed. However, a suicide bomber thought to have crossed recently from Syria killed at least 10 people, most of them German tourists. in Istanbul's historic heart on Tuesday in an attack Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu blamed on Daesh. Davutoglu said that all of those killed in Sultan Ahmed near the Blue Mosque, major tourist site in the center of one of the world's most visited sites, were foreigners. A senior Turkish official said 9 were German, while Peru's foreign minister said a Peruvian man was killed. Deputy Prime Minister said the bomber was believed to have recently entered Turkey from Syria but was not on Turkey's watch list of suspected militants. He said earlier that the bomber had been identified from body parts at the scene and was thought to be a Syrian born in 1988. Davutoglu said he had spoken by phone with German Chancellor Angela Merkel to offer condolences and vow Turkey's fight against Daesh at home and as part of the U.S.-led coalition would continue. On the other hand, the White House condemned the heinous attack and pledged solidarity with NATO ally Turkey against terrorism.
Welcome back, our dear viewers. Of course, we have witnessed what happened in Turkey in the square of Sultan Ahmed, the bomb which exploded there, casualties of tourists. It's a very sad scene to be seen taking place in Turkey and in the world. Many people are the victims of terrorist attacks. Mr. Sheta, how should we handle this? Because the terrorism is hitting everywhere. Paris, Egypt, Turkey, everywhere now.
And of course, the situation in Turkey is even more sophisticated and complicated because of their direct borders with Syria. Of course, first of all, my sincerest condolences to the families of the victims, and of course also not only to the Turkish people, also to the German people, because actually it was obviously a German tourist group, and also Angela Merkel and Chancellor Angela Merkel, and also the Foreign Minister of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier. They sent their sincerest condolences yesterday after making sure that at least 10 German citizens were killed in this blast.
It's really sad.
What surprises me a little bit is that President Erdogan was so fast in stating who that
the Syrian group was behind.
That it was a Syrian person who committed this. So let's just wait and see how it will develop, and hopefully we will not see any of such terrorist attacks anywhere in the world, not only in Turkey.
With the chaotic scene in many places around the world, I believe there should be a united stance in order to face terrorism, because of course it's hitting everywhere, and no place is secure anymore.
And this shows again that this so-called Islamic State terrorist group is not only a regional problem, but it's now it became an international problem after the attacks of Charlie Hebdo and Paris and now Turkey and Lebanon and everything.
And moving to El Masri El Yom, from where we read an economic news. Egyptian stock extended losses on Tuesday as part of global and regional downward trend impacted by slowing growth in China and failing oil prices. The benchmark EGX 30 index dipped by 2.58% to reach 6,463 points, with daily stock turnover registering £782.7 million. Institutions, mostly Arab and foreigners, were net sellers to tune of £144 million, and the market capitalization lost £5.7 billion to 411.1 billion Egyptian pounds. The details about the performance of the Egyptian stock market in the following report.
Egypt's stock market indices continued its losses for the third consecutive session, affected by selling operations from Arab and foreign investors. The main EGX 30 index lost 2.58%. The small and medium shares index EGX 70 retreated 0.56%. Meanwhile, the more expanded EGX 100 index lost 0.87%. Markets capital lost £5.7 billion, with overall transactions and dealings within the session that reached £78.7 million. Meanwhile, oil forged fresh 12-year lows Tuesday on global oversupplies, prompting OPEC member Nigeria to call for an emergency meeting to address collapsing prices that have ravaged revenues. The Nigerian Petroleum Resources Minister declared that he expects an extraordinary meeting of the oil cartel in early March to discuss lower crude prices. However, Saudi-led Gulf exporters within the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries have so far refused to cut production to curb sliding prices, seeking to protect their market share despite a heavy blow to their revenues.
Mr. Sheta, how do you see the performance of the Egyptian stock market? Of course, it was affected to a great extent by the fall in the global market and, of course, what happened in China, the failing of the oil prices. So how do you read that? And expect the Egyptian stock market and the world stock market to continue declining in the coming days?
Of course, the Egyptian stock market is more or less connected to the international stock market as well. Of course, the oil prices, which fell to a historic and 11 years low last week, definitely also had an influence. Another very important news is that the Saudi Arabian state-owned company Aramco, which is the biggest oil production company in the world, has decided to be listed on a stock market, and this will probably also affect the oil prices, because this company would be the first company which would pass the $1 trillion dollars value on a stock market. So this definitely also had an effect. In addition, of course, to the problems which we mentioned earlier in China regarding the equity markets in China. Another very important news, which actually was very important for the Egyptians, is that there is zero customs on the cars with only 1300 cc engine displacement in Egypt. And I think this is something which most of the Egyptians will like very much.
Indeed, Mr. Mohamed Sheta, our media expert, thank you very much for being with us, and have a lovely morning.
Thank you very much. You too, have a lovely
And
day.
with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of our press review for today. Now we'll go to a short break, and after that we'll be back to continue the segments of The Breakfast Show. So stay tuned.